This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Israel intensifies assault in the Gaza Strip amid international calls for de-escalation of its conflict with Palestine. Alarm raised in Uganda over dwindling stocks of medicines for COVID-19 as vaccines also dry up. And we look at what motorcycle enthusiasts in Benghazi are doing to help change negative perceptions about Libya. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this hour. In business news, Egypt accelerates construction of roads to spur economic growth. And in your sport, Liverpool keep their Champions League hopes alive by defeating Manchester United. We begin the hour in the Middle East, where Israel's military assault on the Gaza Strip is intensifying. Defense forces earlier struck a number of what they say were Hamas rocket sites. The military says it launched an attack overnight involving 160 aircraft, tanks, artillery, and infantry units along the Gaza border. Over 150 targets were struck. Gaza's health ministry says 119 people have been killed, including 31 children. Israeli officials say rockets continue to be fired from Gaza. They say 7 people have been killed in Israel since fighting began on Monday. In a televised address, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the military operation would continue as long as was necessary. Stephanie Freed has this report by phone from Tel Aviv.
The IDF, Israel Defense Forces, tweeted, air and ground troops are currently attacking in the Gaza Strip. Not long after that, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted, I told you we will exact a very heavy price from Hamas. We are doing this. We'll continue to do so with great force. The last word hasn't been spoken, and this operation will continue for as long as it takes. Now, ground troops attacking in Gaza, that could mark a whole new level in the violence between the sides. But because the scope of this attack isn't clear yet, it's also unclear whether this means a full-scale invasion, a limited incursion to knock out rocket capabilities or target Hamas operatives. The last time Israel conducted a large-scale invasion into Gaza was in 2014. Local news is reporting that the IDF launched a massive air, artillery, and tank fire bombardment on Gaza. For the past few hours, there has been a near constant stream of rocket fire from Gaza onto southern Israel. The IDF has ordered everyone within a radius of 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles of the Gaza Strip to go into bomb shelters and stay there until further notice. On a related note, 120 U.S. Defense Department personnel were flown out of Israel on Thursday as a precautionary measure in light of the ongoing violence. The personnel were in Israel planning a bilateral exercise, and that news comes according to the Pentagon press secretary.
On the Palestinian side, Hamas has warned that there are no red lines in retaliating against Israel. Noor Harasin earlier spoke with us from Gaza, where she reported from a residential building that had been hit by Israeli strikes.
More than 150 airstrikes were launched on Gaza by the Israeli warplanes. Also, Israeli tanks fired towards Palestinian homes on the borderline between Gaza and Israel, making hundreds of families and forcing them to evacuate their homes to central Gaza city. At the same time, the Israeli naval forces were shelling from the western side of Gaza. So yesterday was really intense here in the Gaza Strip. Homes were destroyed on the heads of its residents. We saw children and women being pulled out from the ruins. It was a very hard time for the Palestinian people. And if we're talking about the Palestinian militants, the Palestinian resistance fighters, especially after what happened yesterday, they made it clear in several press conferences that they will go on as long as Israel go. And this morning we heard tens of rockets being fired from Gaza towards Israel. The number of casualties, the number of people killed in the past 4 days is going up every hour. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 120 Palestinians were killed, including 27 children and 12 women, while more than 600 were injured.
Meanwhile, tension is also spreading in mixed communities of Jews and Arabs in Israel. President Reuven Rivlin has warned of the danger of civil war. In the city of Lod, police patrolled the streets and made arrests on Thursday after synagogues had been attacked and fighting broke out in some communities. The hostilities have opened a new front by fueling tensions between Israeli Jews and the country's Arab minority, which accounts for about 21% of the population. Jewish and Arab groups attacked people and damaged shops, hotels, and cars in cities across the country. Police report that more than 400 people have been arrested. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has warned against further escalation of violence in the occupied territories. Fatou Bensouda says that individuals involved in escalating the crisis may be targeted by the court.
I said that these are events that we're looking at very seriously. We are monitoring also very closely. And I remind that investigations have opened, and the evolution of these events could be something that we will also look at in the course of our investigations. I think this is just to alert people to be, not to escalate, to be careful, and to avoid taking actions that will result in the commission of Rome Statute crimes.
China has voiced deep concerns about the worsening hostilities between Israel and Palestine. China is the president of the Security Council for this month. It says it will continue to do its best to ensure that the council takes action as soon as possible.
In collaboration with relevant countries, China drafted and disseminated a Security Council presidential statement. Most countries supported this draft and called for its early release. However, the Council has yet to reach consensus on it due to the obstruction of a certain country. China condemns violence targeting civilians. We call on parties to avoid further provocative rhetoric and acts and take actions conducive to reducing violence and achieving a soft landing of the situation, so as to restore peace and stability on the ground at an early date.
No joint statement was issued after Wednesday's meeting due to the opposition from the United States. The UN Security Council is to meet again on Sunday. The 15-member council has met privately twice this week about the hostilities, but has so far been unable to agree on a public statement. Diplomats say such statements are agreed to by consensus, and the United States did not believe it would be helpful. Well, let's now turn our attention to the continent. In Uganda, concern is growing as stocks of medicines used to manage COVID-19 complications and vaccines dry up. A temporary halt on drug exports by India is putting a strain on healthcare systems in Africa. Isabel Nakira reports.
David Ekau has sold out all his stocks of the remdesivir drug. It's used in managing the advanced complications of COVID-19. His pharmacy has been depending on supplies from India.
It's a product which is at about $60, but even at 10 times that price, they're not allowed to export it. Yeah. So right now, if you're a patient in Uganda and there's need for that product, it will be very difficult for you to access it.
Uganda is in its second wave of infections and COVID-19 cases are on the rise. The vaccination rollout has also been affected. Just over 400,000 people in Uganda have received their first dose of vaccines, and many of these were due for their second vaccination. People who turned up to receive their second jabs were asked to return in June. The country received 964,000 doses from the UN-backed COVAX initiative and the Indian government in March. Health officials say they are aiming to give as many first doses as possible to give a level of immunity to a larger number of people. But with vaccines running out, the health ministry is worried many may miss out.
The vaccines are going to be in a short supply for a long time, and we don't need to, we need to maintain the use and compliance to the SOPs.
The health ministry says more than 2 million doses of vaccines may arrive in June, but it's not clear where the vaccines will be coming from. The WHO has approved the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine for emergency use, and this could be an option for some African countries.
One is mobilizing doses from countries which are failing to absorb the vaccines as quickly as possible. That's one mechanism. Number two, there is also another mechanism where the production capacity of that factory is being expanded.
Authorities are urging people to observe safe distance measures and wash hands in order to contain the virus. Uganda has also maintained restrictions on night curfews and the closure of pubs and nightclubs. But with infections climbing, pharmacists like David warned the government that it needs to pay urgent attention to acquiring supplies from other drug exporters rather than relying heavily on India. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is asking countries to strengthen their public health measures and diversify their source of vaccines. The Africa CDC says it is concerned that the number of COVID-19 infections are on the rise, yet many countries on the continent continue to rely heavily on the COVAX facility. Reporting from Addis Ababa, here's Coletta Wanjohi.
The Africa CDC says people are exhibiting pandemic fatigue with relaxed implementation of public health measures. There are concerns of a possible new wave of infections, with the Africa CDC reporting cases of the same variant as India in about 6 countries.
We might actually have an increase in the number of cases. So what we've done way ahead of time is to ensure that we ramp up our capacity to produce oxygen. So in every state of Nigeria right now, we're establishing oxygen plants.
The Africa CDC is also concerned that very few countries have shown interest in acquiring the Johnson & Johnson vaccine through the AU. The African Union made a deal with the company to acquire 400 million doses of the vaccine, with the first batch of 220 million expected to arrive in the continent from July. However, it is reported that less than 10 countries have expressed interest to acquire the doses through the Afrexim Bank that is offering a financial solution. The Africa CDC says countries should not only rely on the supply from WHO-supported COVAX facility.
You can only count on your own, take your destiny into your hands by investing in your own health security. We all know that even if COVAX gave us all the vaccines that they promised they would provide, they were only going to give us about 30% of the doses.
The COVID-19 vaccination rate in Africa remains low as uncertainty of more supply heightens. The continent has so far received only 38 million doses of vaccines, mainly from the WHO-supported COVAX facility. And this is still low for its target of 750 million people. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The Tunisian Prime Minister has called for increased COVID-19 vaccinations targeting all vulnerable groups in the country. At the same time, the Tunisian Scientific Committee is urging the Health Ministry to ensure that at least 1 million elderly people are vaccinated before the end of this month. And Shiwashi has that story.
Tunisia's national vaccination strategy and sensitizing campaign is targeting residents of care centers. The National Observatory of New and Emerging Diseases considers elderly people as the most vulnerable to COVID-19.
I'm convinced that there is no other way to save lives other than getting vaccinated. Just like most people at this care center, I suffer from a chronic illness. I encourage all citizens to protect themselves and their loved ones.
I got inoculated even though I was against vaccination because I was terrified. Finally, I did it after watching sensitization campaigns. The virus is deadly. We need to protect our communities.
The Minister of Women, Family, Child and Elderly Affairs noted that her departments have created a special unit in charge of registering elderly people for COVID-19 vaccine. The initiative targets residents of care centers who do not have access to online and mobile registration.
Some elderly people are isolated and are not well informed about the COVID-19 vaccine. We're helping them register on the national vaccination platform. A special team explains to care center residents the importance of vaccination. Some young people do not allow their parents to get inoculated. Our role is to inform and protect the population.
The Minister of Health said older adults are at higher risk of severe illness from the virus. Therefore, people who live with them need to take precautions to protect themselves from getting COVID-19.
Our objective is to vaccinate all elderly people because they are vulnerable to infections. We are also planning in partnership with other ministries to vaccinate the whole population. Our department has recorded many infections, hospitalizations and deaths among younger generations.
Many Tunisians feel frustrated with the slow vaccine rollout and distribution process at vaccination centers. The health department has urged the COVID-19 task force to increase the number of medics and paramedics.
Prime Minister Hisham Mishishi has announced that his government has stepped up efforts to accelerate the vaccination campaign. The health department will give priority to groups with high risk of infection, including teachers, as well as tourism and transport staff. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Over in Asia, India's health ministry is reporting more than 340,000 new daily COVID infections. These numbers take India's overall caseload past the 24 million mark. The death toll in India is reported to have increased by 4,000 to more than 262,000 in total. The capital, New Delhi, is under a third successive lockdown until May the 17th. Meanwhile, in neighboring Nepal, health authorities say that country is now in a crisis situation. 5 people suffocated at a hospital there this week after oxygen ran out. Hospitals across Nepal say they are under tremendous pressure due to a shortage of oxygen supply. Another challenge they're facing is their ICU beds running at capacity. Let's now take a short break. More news coming up. Here's what you can expect. Violent clashes over an Eid celebrations venue in Kinshasa leave 1 police officer dead. And we look at what motorcycle enthusiasts in Benghazi are doing to help change negative perceptions about Libya.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Adnan Shawishi, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. You're watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. Let's go over to West Africa, where Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has approved new security measures for parts of the country which have experienced deadly attacks on security forces in recent weeks. CGTN's Deji Badmos brings us more on that story.
The announcement follows a series of attacks on security personnel in the country's southeast and south-south regions. In just over 2 weeks, close to 20 security personnel have been killed in mainly hit-and-run attacks by unidentified gunmen. Several police stations have also been raided and burnt. And just last month, over 1,800 inmates were freed after gunmen attacked a prison facility in the southeastern Imo state. The government has blamed many of the attacks on the banned separatist group Indigenous People of Biafra, but the group has denied any involvement in the said attacks. President Buhari has been holding frequent meetings with heads of the country's security agencies in order to find a lasting solution to the country's security challenges. Tuesday's National Security Council meeting was the third in less than 2 weeks. Police Chief Usman Alkali Baba told journalists after the meeting that measures have been agreed on that will specifically address the security challenges in the southeast and south-south of the country.
We will see how we can change the narrative within the quickest possible means to restore law and order and restore peace in that area.
But not everyone is happy that special attention has been given to the insecurity in the southeast and south-south regions of the country only.
That the security challenges we're having in the country are national in nature, they are multi-dimensional, multi-ethnic, and then that they are coming up with a national solution. It doesn't have to be a southeast and south-south. So the implication is that the impression they have is that the security challenge in the country as at today was occasioned by southeast and south-south. Is that a reflection of the true situation on ground? And if you ask me, the answer is no.
Many Nigerians now hope that the government will restore peace and security in the hardest hit regions. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
DRC President Felix Tshisekedi has just concluded a visit to Ethiopia. He was visiting the country in his capacity as the AU chairperson. He met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to discuss the Grand Renaissance Dam. The DRC president is seeking to help Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt reach an amicable agreement. Tshisekedi had visited both Egypt and Sudan on earlier visits to discuss the issue. Speaking to Tshisekedi, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed expressed his desire to find an African solution to the problem. A comprehensive agreement on the dam has yet to be reached. Meanwhile, in the DRC, a clash between rival Muslim groups left one police officer dead. The fight broke out in the capital, Kinshasa. Around 40 people were injured and 35 arrested in connection with the fight. Authorities say a disagreement broke out over who could use the Martyrs Sports Stadium to mark the end of Ramadan. The two rival factions had for years disputed the leadership of the Comico Muslim Federation. Prior to the fight, leaders had promised Kinshasa's government that they would celebrate the end of Ramadan together.
Unfortunately, there were extremists on both sides who did not want to reconcile and to pray together. They threw projectiles, they violently attacked the police. We mourn the death of a police officer today.
In Tunisia, celebrations to mark Eid were largely confined to homes due to restrictions on social gatherings. Adnan Shuashi has more details on how the day was marked in the North African nation.
Neji bin Bilgasim remembers the last Eid al-Fitr when he used to go to the mosque to pray. But this year, Neji is offering greetings and congratulations on Eid from home. All mass prayers were banned by the authorities during the general lockdown to stem the spread of the coronavirus.
It's unfortunate to have to celebrate this religious day at home. I'm calling my brothers and family and talking to them through social media. This is unusual but necessary to save lives. It's difficult to cope with marking Eid al-Fitr at home. I have only seen my nephew who lives in the same area. People are afraid of the coronavirus.
Neji's wife, Munira, is happy to see her granddaughters after several months of isolation. She has taught the two children how to make traditional sweets to impress their online guests.
This Eid is different from previous years because we cannot meet all our family members due to the pandemic. At least I was lucky to see my granddaughters who helped me prepare traditional sweets. I made traditional food for lunch. It is a happy day despite social distancing.
Many Tunisians have respected the prevention measures imposed by the government during the holy month of Ramadan, as well as on Eid al-Fitr.
The pandemic has made us rethink our festivities and celebrations. I just visited my uncle while I stood on the outside door of other relatives. The virus is deadly. That's why we need to comply with safety measures. I hope this is the last Eid al-Fitr in these conditions. Coronavirus has changed all our habits.
Eid al-Fitr 2021 is the third Eid to be celebrated amid the pandemic. Tunisian Muslims performed the Eid prayer at home as mosques across the country remained closed as a COVID-19 safety measure.
Despite the COVID-19 pandemic and the general lockdown in the country, Eid al-Fitr remains one of the most important religious celebrations for Muslims in Tunisia and the world. Health authorities assert that social distancing is one of the key strategies in flattening the curve of infection rates. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
In Egypt, a raft of restrictions are in place during this period. Yasser Hakim reports on how Egyptians are celebrating Eid despite the challenges posed by the pandemic.
For centuries, Muslims have always started their Eid festivities with an early morning prayer. The Eid prayers were allowed to go ahead in Egypt after being suspended since 2019 because of the coronavirus pandemic.
The Eid prayer has a special place in the heart of all Muslims around the world, not just in Egypt. So being prohibited from performing it lately has had a negative psychological effect on all of us. When it was allowed this year, we were very happy. Of course, much happier this Eid than before.
Thank God there are Eid prayers, much better than last year when we were not allowed. I will spend Eid like every year. I'll eat kakh sweets, biscuits and salted fish, the traditional Eid food for Egyptians.
There were precautionary measures in place, such as prohibiting a deep-rooted tradition of praying outdoors, as well as maintaining social distancing and wearing masks inside the mosques. Although the mosques were open for the Eid prayers, for the rest of the weekend it will be under a closure because of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's why Egyptians this year will not be able to enjoy the Eid festivities like every year. To avoid mass gatherings, shops, cafes, restaurants, malls and similar establishments are ordered to close early at 9 p.m. local time every day. All parks, public beaches, parties and indoor weddings have been banned completely. Most Egyptians usually hang out at night due to the summer heat in the morning hours. Many would have to alter their celebration plans this time around.
I will spend Eid at home. To preserve our health, we will not let our kids go out. Instead of gatherings like every year, we will get in touch with relatives and friends by phone and online like Facebook.
I always go out with my friends to a cafe, mall and such to take some time off my studies and enjoy the Eid. Because of the coronavirus, I will spend the Eid communicating with my friends on Zoom, play games online and watch movies. I'll manage.
Most Egyptians tell me that no matter how they will spend the Eid holidays, they'll try to enjoy the occasion as a break from the tension and gloom brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, here's a quick reminder of our top stories. Israel's military assault on the Gaza Strip is intensifying. The military says it launched an attack overnight involving 160 aircraft, tanks, artillery, and infantry units along the Gaza border. Over 150 targets were struck. Gaza's health ministry says 119 people have been killed so far, including 31 children. In Uganda, concern is growing as stocks of medicines used to manage COVID-19 complications and vaccines dry up. Uganda is in its second wave of infections and COVID-19 cases are on the rise. A temporary halt on drug exports by India is putting a strain on many healthcare systems in Africa. And over in the DRC, President Felix Tshisekedi has just concluded a visit to Ethiopia. Tshisekedi was visiting the country in his capacity as the AU chairperson. He is seeking to help Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt reach an amicable agreement over the Grand Renaissance Dam. The DRC president had visited both Egypt and Sudan in earlier visits. Well, those were the stories making headlines this hour. Let's now take a short break. When we return, your business headlines. Egypt accelerates construction of roads to spur economic growth.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, it's time now for the business news. Let's begin in Egypt, which is experiencing a boom in infrastructure development. The country is making progress in building new roads to galvanize its economy. But some of the construction work is causing unease among local residents. Noktula Shabalala tells us more.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is inspecting a road construction site in Cairo. After decades of rapid population growth and congested roads, these highways and bridges are a big infrastructure push meant to develop Egypt's economy, connecting people with transport networks and basic services.
I am making this number of bridges and roads. Why? What is the purpose? It is to ease movement. Exactly.
This infrastructure boom is coming at a cost. Some residents in the Azbet al-Hagana neighborhood are becoming displaced by the new roads.
These changes worry people. We are out of work. There is no more work. The president came here for a visit and he saw Azbet al-Hagana. He said that these small alleys have to be widened so that firefighting trucks and ambulances can pass through. Well, for an alley to be widened, this means he will have to demolish more homes.
Across eastern Cairo and beyond, many long-delayed road projects are racing ahead. According to the Transport Ministry, as much as $70 billion will be spent on transport until 2024. 1/3 of that will go towards roads and bridges.
The sheer number of projects. I'm someone who's a resident of Masr El Gedida. You go to sleep and wake up to find a new project completed. You're not cut off from the area and you find a finished bridge. The speed and the skill in having the traffic movement not as obstructed as what we used to see before. The scale of roads, the scale of expansion, the sewage systems. The scale of projects seems to have multiplied 10 times compared to what was happening before President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi.
A World Bank study in 2014 estimated that congestion costs Cairo alone 3.6% of Egypt's gross domestic product. Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
Nigeria's power grid has shut down again, resulting in a major power outage in many parts of the country. Nigeria has been struggling for years with irregular power supply, despite the government's promises to stabilize it. Reporting from Jos, here is Tese Makende.
The Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, says the national grid experienced a total system collapse on Wednesday. TCN General Manager Public Affairs Ndidi Mba says the cause of the voltage collapse that led to the outage is currently being investigated. In the meantime, she's calling for patience from citizens and says work has already started on restoring the grid. Last month, Nigeria also suffered a major power outage after 16 out of 28 power generating plants either suffered a breakdown, experienced gas shortage, or required maintenance. In February, the national grid experienced partial collapse, leading to power outage in many parts of Nigeria, including Lagos and Abuja. The country's power generation capacity is around 13,000 megawatts, but only an average of about 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts is distributed across the country. According to the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, the country requires close to 200,000 megawatts of electricity for its over 200 million population. The Ministry of Power has reiterated its promises to diversify the country's energy sources away from hydro and gas generated to other sources like solar, as well as rectify the recurring electricity problems and restore better power supply soon. Tessem Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Along the border between Tunisia and Libya, informal trade agreements have led to a tight-knit border economy. The onset of the spring season marks the beginning of the annual sheep shearing festival in the region. In the following report, Anen Shuashi tells us how farmers collect the wool, which is later sold at local markets.
On the first day of the Spring Festival, hundreds of men gather at dawn and pray. These Tunisian tribesmen belong to different tribes who live in the region of Bingerden, near the border with Libya. It takes several hours to collect the animals from the desert dryland pastures and to count the sheep.
Sheep breeding is part of our culture in this region. Many tribesmen, especially nomads, believe it's a sacred animal which we must take care of and protect. In the past, it was the only source of milk, food, and the sole way of earning a living. The Spring Festival marks the beginning of the Sheep Sharing Festival. It's an exceptional period of joy and fun.
On shearing day, the barn is cleaned and the sheep legs are tied up. Professional sheep shearers are hired for this difficult task. They take turns singing while shearing the woolly animal with scissors. This operation requires skill so that the sheep is shorn efficiently and quickly without causing cuts or injury.
I've learned these skills from my ancestors. Usually when I start working, I don't have time for cutting a sheep fleece while the shearing is going on. If I see a patch that is too felted or soiled to be of use, I will put it aside. Otherwise, most of the wool goes into the bag to be scattered later.
Farmers collect the wool which is sold at the local market. However, many merchants who sell wool to manufacturers of woolen products are struggling. Wool's popularity has been in decline in the North African country since the 1990s. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic has added problems that businesses can ill afford.
The wool market is facing unprecedented difficulties due to the general lockdown, which prevents middlemen from selling the merchandise in other cities. Tons of wool are lying unsold in depots. This unusual situation has pushed prices down. Revenues are likely to be significantly reduced this season.
The economy of border regions with Libya is based on trade. These large swaths of arid and hostile areas become welcoming in the month of May, which marks the annual season of the Spring Shearing Festival. The spring celebrations will last several days. This annual event attracts singers, musicians, and domestic tourists.
People in the desert of Bingerden have celebrated the Spring Festival despite movement restrictions imposed for COVID-19 control. Now Tunisian sheep breeders are calling on the Agriculture Department and the Tunisian Confederation of Trade, Industry and Handicrafts to facilitate the sale and distribution of good quality fleece, which is produced in the border regions. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Time for a show break. Here's what's still to come. We'll look at what motorcycle enthusiasts in Benghazi are doing to help change negative perceptions about Libya.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To Libya now, where motorcycle riding is gaining a large following. Bikers in the city of Benghazi say they are trying to change the country's image of a war-scarred one into a place of fun and peace through biking. Let's take a look.
Libya's city of Benghazi is a cradle of the country's 2011 revolution and was a one-time stronghold of extremists. Some of the city's residents are hoping that through biking, they can show another side of their once war-torn country.
A lot of people used to look at motorcyclists and see them as criminals. We have completely changed this image. We want to show Benghazi in a good way. We used to ride even in the days of the war. We've had French and British crews film us, and we've shown them that not all Libyans make war. They are not all criminals.
Emerging from the headquarters of the Benghazi Motorcycle Club, rumbling engines and dozens of leather-clad, heavy-duty motorbike enthusiasts tear up the city's tarmac in their regular parades. Club members say biking is not only a passion, it's also a way of portraying the city in a different light, a semblance of normality, despite Libya's pervasive division and violence.
In the city of Benghazi, there are those who fight and there are those who have a passion. During the war, we used to ride our bikes.
The bikers say that by showing off their passion, they've created a platform to educate more people about biking.
Before the 2011 revolution, people used to see whoever was driving a motorcycle as abnormal. But thank God, after the revolution, that image has changed, especially after more than one documentary was filmed showing how to properly identify bikers through their uniform and motorcycles. Now, families and children come to have their picture taken with us.
The Benghazi Motorcycle Club was established in 2014, 3 years after the fall of Libya's longtime leader, Muammar Gaddafi. It has about 120 members. Aside from educating people about biking in their parades, club members also raise funds for charities. Astatal, CGTN.
Some sport action coming up after the break. Here's what you can expect. Liverpool keep their Champions League hopes alive by defeating Manchester United.
Every year, approximately 400 million tons of plastic is produced, and about 40% of that is single use.
79% of that is not recycled, it's not turned into energy, it's just going into landfill or into the environment in some way.
With the global focus on plastic pollution and my eldest son Tristan studying marine biology, I wanted to get involved and see for myself the true extent of the pollution in our region.
We're on our way!
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for your sport news. We kick off in Cairo, where record 9-time winners Al-Ahly have been drawn to face South African champions Mamelodi Sundowns in the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League. Al-Ahly are aiming for a 10th trophy. Their coach, Peter Mosimane, returns to South Africa to face a side he led the 2016 title in an added twist to the tale. Here's CGTN's Adel Mruche with that story.
The CAF Champions League quarter-final draw wasn't kind to Al-Ahly's coach